There it is. There's the Topwater box. And I'm going to tell you when to throw what topwater bait for catching bass. You know, there's a ton of different topwater baits. I mean, this is my box right here. An entire box of a bunch of different type of topwaters. Don't have buzz baits in here, but basically every hard plastic topwater bait is kind of in here. And I'm going to go through the different basic styles and when I throw which one. Like I'm going to show you there's walking topwater baits like a spook. We've got poppers. We've got ploppers and ploppers. And then we've also got, let's see here, got some wake baits, like this little jewel here. And we've got more of the pencil popper style, like this is a shower blows, but any of the pencil popper style, it's going to be different than the spook. And then let's see, what else do we have in here? Okay, we got another type in here. We got a mess is what we've got. Look at this one. This is perfect, right? We've got prop baits, and there's different styles, different sizes of prop baits. But here's a prop bait. You can see it's got the blades on each end. This is a double prop bait. There's single ones with the only ones on the back, but these are kind of another category. So we'll go through these 6 categories here real quick, explain to you when to throw which one in what situation. So I'm going to start out with the walking bait. Now this is a Zero Spook style bait right here. There's a bunch of different variations. There's a Strike King Sexy Dog. There are, let's see, other styles. There's the Vixen. There's 2 Vixens right there from Reaction Innovations. Spro has a wicked walking bait coming. It's called the Haint. It's a little heads up on the Haint coming up. But all these walking style baits, that's kind of where I start first. I throw straight braid. On the smaller ones, I'm gonna throw 30-pound Sunline X Plasma. On the bigger ones, I'm gonna throw 50-pound X Plasma. And once you go to braid on a walking bait, you're never gonna go back, because that braid is more supple, it casts further, and when you make a really, really long cast and you twitch it one time and one eats it, you've got an immediate hookup, and then you're just gonna get a water ski them in. But those are bait casting. Generally, you can absolutely work them on a spinning rod as well, but they're gonna do that walk the dog action, go back and forth. I really like these because it's a combination of being able to cover water and be able to draw fish up to the bait. So that's kind of what I'm thinking about when I'm thinking about walk the dog baits. You can throw the walk the dog spook style baits along grass lines, over top of points, because you're going to be the bait's going to be doing a lot of action, but it's not going to be moving really fast. So that's kind of what you want to think about. A lot of action, a lot of commotion, but not moving really fast. So it's going to draw fish from a long ways, and then kaboosh, they're gonna crush it. And it's got that, it's really, really good in clear water, but I've caught plenty of fish in some stained water as well, because it has that constant movement, and it's gonna, with the ones with the rattles in it, you're gonna go chuck, 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 coming across the top, drawing fish from a long distance away. They hear that commotion, they start coming to it, and it's not running away from them. So that's kind of when I'm wanting that. Like I said, grass lines, on points. You can throw it around cover. Over lay downs is a really good place for these style baits, because like I said, they move and they're almost constantly moving, but they're not covering a lot of water. They're not moving really fast. So that's when I'm going to be using that. Great post spawn all the way into the fall. those are really good. So then we'll just jump over to the poppers. This is Spro E-Pop 80. It's got a rattle in it. I mean, the Zero, the Rebel, Pop R, Original. There's a bunch of different ones out there, and this is just the one I'm showing you for an example. But the poppers are a different style of bait when you want more of the commotion and then just absolutely sitting still. Commotion, sitting still. Now, some people, you can walk these just like you do a Zero Spook, but if I want to walk a bait, I'm going to throw like a smaller spook style bait, smaller walking bait than just trying to walk those. The only exception to that maybe is like when I'm throwing the P70, a bigger popper like this right here. You can throw that thing and you can twitch it and walk it, and it almost sits in one place, and it'll draw fish, up out of bushes, around docks, things like that. But generally, I'm going to fish poppers. Splash, splash, stop. Splash, splash, stop. And you can let that thing sit kind of as long as you can stand it. In that immediate post spawn, these are really, really good when they're fry guarders, when there's fish still guarding fry, and immediately after that's over. So wherever the spawn is over in your area, for like the next month, couple weeks, two to 4 weeks after that spawn, poppers are really good. And they're really good in ponds. This is an amazing pond bait. Talked about that recently. But the poppers are really good for when the fish are in a certain area, and you're going to be throwing near a piece of cover generally, whether it's a grass clump, a dock, a laydown. You're going to plop, draw that attention and just let it sit. And generally they'll sit down like this. Most of them have a feather on the back because they're going to see that feather, and it's going to be just kind of undulating with the water currents. Come up, crush it. So that's the popper. Now we'll go from the popper to the plopper. Now the plopper is almost the opposite of a popper. This thing, you're going to throw it out and then just constantly reel it. Just steady reel it. It's not interchangeable with a buzzbait, but a buzzbait and a plopper are used in some of the same situations. Generally, I'll just use a buzzbait when there's more cover, maybe some grass on the water. But the plopper, because of the treble hooks, I'm going to use more open water situations. You can absolutely throw it around cover if you trust your casting skills. Throw that out there. But this is a 110. They've got smaller ones, they've got bigger ones. The 130 is bigger. And then the El Chapo with Berkeley thing, it's good because they kind of fill in some different sizes. They've got a 120, a 105, or 100, whatever. They have some different sizes, kind of fill in all the gaps around Rivers Sea. I thought that was kind of smart of them. But anyway, the plopper style baits are really good when it's just like open water, flat bank, really not much cover. You don't want to spend a lot of time on one piece of cover. The plopper is a great way to cover a lot of water. They're amazing in the summer, in that fall, especially when you don't know where they're going to be. There's a lot of fish roaming, a lot of fish, like wolf packs running along the bank. So you're just going to be casting. You can cast this thing on 50-pound braid a country mile. The 110, 130, even the little 70, 75, I believe it is. The little fat guy, little short fat guy. It's got a nice, good sound to it. You can throw those things a country mile, and then the whole key to them is you want to keep your braid or your line out of the water while it's working. Because if that braid is in the water, it wants to pull it down. It doesn't have that same gurgling sound. Keep that braid up, reel it. That thing's just going to absolutely get crushed. So that's what I'm going to be throwing. You can throw it on grass lines, but grass lines where you've got half a mile of grass line and you don't know where they're going to be. So you just want to cover a lot of water, find the active ones, and then sometimes this thing will absolutely trigger bass that you didn't, that really weren't going to bite anything else, but for some reason they just trigger on that plopper style bait. Really good late in the fall too. Don't put this thing away too quickly. There are a lot of times November, even December, water into the 50s, maybe even lower. You're not going to get a ton of bites, but you're going to catch some good ones on that plopper. So that's when you want to go with that plopper style bait. So now we're going to jump over to the pencil popper style bait. Like I said, this is shower blows right here. but you're going to be throwing the pencil popper style baits almost interchangeably with the spook style baits, but this bait doesn't move as fast, like it doesn't sashay left and right as much. It more or less kind of just hops back and forth. So you're going to get a lot of splash, a lot of commotion, but it's not going to be, the bait's not going to be going real hard left to right. So you're going to get a lot of splash. It almost will sit in one spot, and then these baits, because of that, you know, that bulbous end there, they cast like a rocket. So you can throw them even further than you can spook style baits. Amazing on any kind of hair. You better have one of these if you're on a herring style lake. Fish are schooling anywhere. These things will draw those schoolers. They have smaller versions as well, but that's the pencil popper style baits. Now we're going to go to wake baits. This is a bait Spro's coming out with. I've been testing it. There's other, it's not the only one. There's other plenty of wake style baits, but they're going to stay up on the surface, and then you're just going to slow reel them, and they're just going to barely break the surface, but they're going to put off a little wake. They're going to be right on the surface. They're going to put off a little wake. They'll be up against the surface and putting off some kind of wake. These are really good whenever the shad are spawning during the daytime and or you've got really slick conditions. So clear water is good. You can catch them in, you know, stained water, but clear water or stained water. But when the water conditions are really calm, if you've got a ripple on the water, wake baits are really not the way to go. If it's really slick and you've got some really shallow areas, or you think the fish are a little more pressured, wake baits can really excel, especially when those shad are spawning at night for whatever reason. A lot of those shad during the daytime, they'll be up on the surface. And then again in the fall, you're gonna have the wake baits come back into play as well, especially when they get a little more pressure and you need to kind of drop to something a little more subtle. The wake baits can be very good there. But then last but not least, we've got the prop style baits. I think this is an old Lure Jensen bait. They haven't made this thing in a coon's age, but this thing is really neat. Any of these, like I said, there's a bunch of different style. I don't see other prop baits in here. I know I've got a couple other in there, but I'll have to dig them out. But the prop style baits are really good in places like Florida, places like Georgia, where you have a lot of grass, because you're going to throw that bait out there, let it sit. You're going to reel up the slack. That's key. Reel up the slack and then give it a quick jerk. And the props are both going to go, and they're going to go, water's going to fly. And then you reel up the slack and jerk again. You can do 2 or 3 in a row. That thing, the water just flies. Anytime you've got some like a rain situation, or you've got a lot of grass, or like heavy overcast, to where you really want the fish to find the bait, that's when those prop baits can come into play. Very interesting, very different action than the other ones. But if, you know, like you got slick, calm conditions, maybe not as much unless you've got a ton of grass. You can throw this thing into like a small pocket of grass. It's like as big as the front deck of your boat. And then, you know, just make like 2 or 3 jerks, and then let it sit, let it sit. And then a lot of those fish that are in that little particular area will come out and crush it. For some reason, it draws fish out of grass really well. But there's the prop style baits. If anybody has any other input on this topic about when to throw what kind of topwater baits, drop it down there in the comments. I would love to hear what you have to say. But let me just tell you right now, keep your eyes out for that Spro bait right there.